Graham, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. Well, thanks for the invite. Well, I became interested in the topic of religion early on as a young teen when I started reading a lot about Indian philosophy and practicing yoga. And here I mean yoga meditation, not so much the physical part, although that was there. But I entered into just a fascination with Eastern philosophy, and then that brought me to Western traditions. And then I dropped out of high school at age 15 to study all day long. My educated parents were a little skeptical about my taking such a jump, but they were very understanding and supportive. And then I went into college a year earlier than my peers. No one really knows how I did that, but I did it. And I didn't have a high school diploma, so I don't know how you get into college without a high school diploma. But I went back so I could study more deeply, from a place of knowledge and with language training and so on. And so honestly, I've never left college. I mean, I'm still here. I'm teaching. I'm a university professor. And I do focus, though. I'm a bit of an overeducated idiot, honestly. I'm 3 master's degrees, which is totally unnecessary. But I went back and forth between University of Chicago and Harvard. 1 master's from Chicago, 2 masters from Harvard, and my doctorate from Harvard is in comparative religion. But my emphasis is on the religions of India and yoga philosophy and so on. So I publish books and articles and so on from the ancient Sanskrit texts, and I live in that world.
Cool. So tell me some more about, how do you pronounce it? Vaishnavism, is that correct?
Vaishnavism, yes.
Vaishnavism.
Right. So within the Hindu complex of traditions, you could say even the family of traditions. The word Hinduism is a bit reductionistic, but from the West, we like to make things simple, So Vaishnavism is one of the 3 major, you could even say 4 major sects or religious traditions under the umbrella of Hinduism. But Vaishnavism is the major one. It's the dominant one. And Vaishnavism really is a word that comes from the word or the name Vishnu, which is a name for the divinity. So Vaishnavism, you can even hear it in there, right? Vishnu, Vaishnavism. So it's those who are centered upon the worship of Vishnu as the supreme divinity. Vishnu also, Krishna, that these are interchangeable names, many names for divinity in the Sanskrit tradition.
So what intrigued you about this philosophy that got you so invested into researching into it?
Well, for one thing, I think it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, there's so many beautiful things about it. So I just happen to like beauty. So the language is beautiful, the imagery is beautiful, the meditative practices themselves are really quite beautiful in terms of the inner world that can be discovered. So that's what attracted me. And the funny thing is that I didn't know at age 13 that I would be attracted in this way. It was I wasn't doing very well in middle school. I was getting either A's or F's, nothing in between. My parents were very bewildered by this. So they sent me to a private school at age 13 for 9th grade. And the headmaster said, "Why don't you get a head start and take my summer school class?" I said, "Well, sure, And I said, "Well, what is the class on?" And he said, "Linguistics." Now, what 13-year-old knows what linguistics is? Many adults don't even know what linguistics is. And so here I am in a linguistics class at age 13. Suddenly I find myself studying the structures of Hebrew and Hittite and Arabic and so on. But then when he went over to South Asia, namely India, and started talking about Sanskrit and the Vedas and yoga practices, my ears perked inexplicably. They just perked. And this was in the mid 60s when yoga really began to flower in this country because immigration laws lifted for Indian immigrants. So many teachers came to the West. And I grew up in Washington, D.C., where they all came through. They all came through Washington. So very few teachers I didn't encounter back in the day.
So, what are the main principles of Vaishnavism?
Well, Vaishnavism is really a religion of the heart. It's about being in love with God. And it's about love. It really is about that. You know, in the Johannine expression, the that is to say, the book of John, the Gospel of John, it says God is love. And I think the Vaishnavas would agree with that. But they reverse it even. Love is God, which is different than saying God is love. It's ultimately the nature and the energy of love that is worshipped in the bhakti or Vaishnava traditions. Bhakti means the offering of all of one's heart to the divine. Bhakti, Bhakti.
And what does this religion say specifically about God? Is it an actual entity that exists somewhere? I'm an atheist, of course, so I don't believe God exists. What are the
Sure.
claims that this religion makes about reality?
It says that there is a divine being which is extremely lovable, but not graspable in the normal way. Um, it's it's a and you know here religion is more like art. You either find beauty in it in a particular piece of art or you don't. Now the problem with much of religion is that different religious traditions, particularly Western ones, will tell you what form of art you're supposed to love. So you can't tell a person what to love. You either love it or you don't. And you know, religion in the Vaishnava sense is really about what those followers find as truly beautiful and sweet and lovable. That's what the tradition's all about. So you can't tell someone what to be in love with, but somehow religions too often say what we should love, and you can't do that. You cannot force love by its very nature. Love cannot be forced or manipulated or threatened or controlled. We're either attracted or we're not.
And what is the importance of being attracted or in love with a particular thing? Does that make it more likely to be true?
You know, when you're in love with something, with someone, it itself is self-validating. Love is something that you don't need to prove. I mean, if you told me that you love the works of Tchaikovsky, and then I say, no, you don't. You don't really love Tchaikovsky. And you would say, but wait a minute, I'm telling you, I love Tchaikovsky. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's provable or not. You're in love with Tchaikovsky's, Violin Concerto, beautiful piece, right? But it may not be beautiful to you. Beautiful to me, but may not be beautiful to you. Someone could come along and say, I love Lady Gaga's music. Oh, really? Oh, gosh, I don't like Lady Gaga. Well, you love Lady Gaga. Well, somewhere in me, I can find it. I can find a place where I can respect that. You really find Lady Gaga's music beautiful. Ah, I love Lady Gaga's music. Well, I mean, if you have any kind of care or sense for that person, you'll respect the fact that they love it, even though you don't love Lady Gaga's music. So, truth, love is its own truth. It's not something that needs to be proven. Um, I love my wife, for example, and I tell you that, and you say, well, prove it. Do I really need to prove that? Well, I mean, I can certainly share with you ways that I find my wife just absolutely adorable and wonderful and so many things, but do I need to prove it? No.
Well, so I would agree that the love is definitely real in some sense, but I can love things that aren't real. I can love imaginary friends, love Harry Potter, love ideals, ideal ways the world could be, the way I imagine certain people to be. But the fact that I love them doesn't necessarily mean it's true, in mean that it corresponds to reality in some sense. And so I would, even though there are certain stories and ideologies that people can love and value, I would still want to know the further question of if that ideology is representative of reality, more than in just the way that you love it.
There's nothing absolutely false. You mentioned Harry Potter. Now, I mean, I have to confess here, I'm really not up on my Harry Potter. Okay. I, I don't, I have other reading that I pursue. So I can't really speak uh, about Harry Potter, but I can tell you that that Harry Potter is not absolutely false. And then what is absolutely true is also very hard to grasp. So we're dealing with a truth that is, in some sense, a future passive participle. I'm sorry if I get a little grammatical with you, but it's something that we as humans are trying to grasp. We're grasping something of reality that is true, but there's a lot around it that is very perspectival and colored by our conditioning. So this is everyone.
I would call that epistemology, the how we know things. That part is definitely very fuzzy, and how we get to differentiate imagination from reality is a very difficult process. But I'd say that
Yes,
that's different from ontology, what actually is true in the reality, independent of whether or not we know it. And so I would
yes.
agree that our means of knowing is very fuzzy, very, very fuzzy. But I wouldn't say that reality itself was fuzzy. I'd say that that is very concrete, black and white.
Well, from reality's point of view, yes. So from the standpoint of reality, I can agree with you on that. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. But from
So why
our
would
point of view, this is what we're talking about, right? From a Vaishnava point of view, from a Christian point of view, from a Taoist point of view, these are different angles of trying to grasp reality. And I think there's so much that's beautiful about them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there are many different ways to try to grasp at reality. But are you worried that your methodology is not as successful as, say, science or something? Or which methodology could we say is a more better at grasping at reality, more accurate understanding of reality? And why would we prefer yours or think it's more accurate than the other ones that we have, like science?
Well, let me put it this way. I think I'm probably a lot closer. I'm older than you. I think I'm a lot closer to my deathbed than you are. Okay, let's just assume that, right? Excuse me. When we are on our deathbeds, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink.
It's a cool mug holder thing. I like it. Rubber grip around it's very nice.
Yeah, let's make sure I don't drop it. Excuse me. So, on our deathbeds, I doubt that I'm going to be reveling in the wonders of science. Although there is clearly a lot to be absolutely in awe of, no question about it. Science has achieved such amazing heights. I mean, I don't think we're going to disagree on that. I mean, it's just amazing. But on my deathbed, I don't think I'm going to be dwelling on that. On my deathbed, I'm going to be, I think, asking myself two things. Have I loved much, and have I loved well? And have I been loved much, and have I been loved well? That's the only thing that we can really finally settle. It's not whether E equals MC squared really worked out, whether that theorem really worked out, and whether Heisenberg and all those people really started, accepting what Einstein said. I'm not going to engage in intellectual, sort of interesting as it might be, intellectual arguments about, scientific theories. All I know is that we come into this world not capable really of acting because our limbs. Have you ever seen a baby? I mean, those human babies, they're strange little creatures, right? They don't act well because they don't have the limbs. They don't even know they have limbs, and the legs are curled up. Have you ever seen that? You pull one of them out and it just bing goes right back into kind of a curled formation. So they don't act well. They don't think well. They are not able to think yet, but they feel. We come into this world feeling in a primal way. When we leave this world, and let's get back to the deathbed again, we're not going to be in a position of acting very well, nor are we going to be in a position of thinking anymore. That's over. If we haven't thought the way we've needed to, well, that's too bad, because that's not a time to do much thinking. We're going to leave this world feeling. And what is deepest in our hearts is what we're going to try to access. Not an easy thing to do. Religion, if religion is really doing what it should do, it should be cultivating that heart in the nature of its ability to love.
Why focus on the moment of birth or the moment of death as the focal points of the analogy? Why not say, last Thursday when I was on the toilet or something, the moment I was feeling thin? Why is that moment any less significant or pertinent to understanding reality than what we think on our deathbed? Why is one particular moment in our life meaningful in what we're trying, how we should understand reality?
That's a really good question, because at a certain level of perfection, that really would be a rhetorical question. Every moment is precious. Every moment is precious. Now, this is the first time I'm meeting you, for example. So even though I don't know you very well, I was invited on. I was thrilled to accept the invitation. I figured this should be an interesting conversation. And now you're bringing up a really incredible point. Yes, every moment is precious. At the same time, when you speak about last Thursday, on the toilet, now let's talk about that, because being on the toilet and taking care of the body and having, bodily issues and so on can be terribly distracting from the sort of ultimate existential kind of matters that confront every human being. Why am I here? I mean, what the hell am I doing here? And look what I find when I'm here. Oh my gosh, look around. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Oh my gosh, look at all this wonderful stuff. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much to distract us. But in the end, and at the beginning, we seem to come full circle. And that's what's significant about the beginning and at the end.
Could there be something more, something greater than love, greater than anything we've experienced yet that we just don't know about. So the reason I like science more than anything is that I think it progresses our understanding and ability to um, do things in reality. And so I think that once we improve our scientific understanding, we will essentially solve death. We won't die. There won't be an end anymore. No more circles.
Yeah.
And when we gain that level of autonomy from dependence on reality, I think we'll have a much deeper insight into the fundamental nature of what's important and valuable. And I think love is important in some sense, but I don't think it's supremely important. I think it's a thing that we value because we have very temporary lives. And so it's the most meaningful thing we can achieve currently. But I don't think it would be the most meaningful thing that could possibly be achieved. And so science, if it gives us the opportunity to cure death, I think there is a broader spectrum of things to value beyond just love.
Really? See, this is where we may part ways a little bit, but I mean, certainly, I mean, I value science. I value the intellectual arena. That's where I am most of the time. I'm on sabbatical right now, but I've got research grants. I'm going to be looking into all kinds of stuff. I mean, I value the mind and the world of the intellect. I mean, I grasp this every day. But behind all of it is that I love it. I'm energized by it. So I don't. It's not merely that I love it for its own sake, but I, I have a relationship with it that seems to nourish my love and appreciation of the world and of persons and cultures and so on. So for me, it's very fulfilling. For me, it's very fulfilling. And I boil it all back to the world of the heart. I think it's the heart. It's what we love. We do what we love. I mean, ideally, we do what we love. Not everyone gets a chance to do that.
The way I
I
see
do
it is
what I love. Yeah. Well, what's that?
for sure. Well, the thing I see is that if I could potentially live forever, I probably wouldn't do what I love forever. I'd probably do it for some time, but I'd want to experiment with things I don't like, experiment with things that cause me pain and suffering. And so at that level of existence, I think we would value more complete stories of both pain and suffering and love and hate compiled together into a narrative of some kind. And
Yeah.
I think that would be more valuable than love in and of itself. I don't think love is a particular part of a story, like a garnish, but it wouldn't be the most important thing. The most important thing would be the entire thing put together. And so I think that while love is interesting, it's like sugar. Like sugar is nice, but I'm not going to have sugar for every meal. I want to mix it up with some other stuff too that is not as interesting. And I think that is more important. And so I don't know why we should put a particularly high value on love as like the ultimate thing. Like as a temporary thing for now, it seems great. I like it a lot. But why should we think it's the ultimate thing? Like I think understanding reality and getting to that point of curing death would be the ultimate thing. And I think that the methodology that can get us closest to that is the one that is probably the best. And I think science probably does that better than any religious ideologies can.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think that science, in a utilitarian fashion, is amazing. The facility that science gives us, the facility for me to talk to you right now, is is science. But the persons utilizing this science really has to do with more of the human nature and our ability to communicate. And I mean, science has come to realize that there are about 37 trillion cells in our bodies. And in each cell, there is over 1 million working parts. I mean, extraordinary. I mean, science can help us appreciate the miracle of life. And Einstein really saw that. That was Einstein's, sort of intellectual appreciation of something that even was beyond science. Um, but I think that when it comes down to you said something about if you had eternity to live for eternally, which, by the way, some traditions say that you do. Right? I mean, there are religious traditions say that you have an eternal life. You are an eternal being encased in a temporal, embodiment situation. Um, so I really think that it does boil down to the heart. And we can talk about love, but we can also talk about other aspects of the heart. We can talk about compassion, kindness, care, empathy, um, the ability to connect with greater and greater parts of reality, not just intellectually, but the heart, as Pascal once said, uh, the heart knows more than what the mind can ever know.
Hmm.
I knew you'd
I don't
like
think I
that.
would agree with that. I think I would see the heart as more of like a mirror of the things you know. So if you know, like, if you see a beautiful artwork, then your heart essentially would reflect the your emotional response to that thing. I don't think your heart would actually know anything, but I don't see love as any more valuable than hate. I think hate is equally as valuable and important and meaningful. And I wouldn't want to get rid of it. I wouldn't want to not be able to feel that. I think that there's a broad spectrum of emotions like colors, and the ability to use all of the colors to create a painting is more valuable than any particular color or emotion. And so hyper focusing on love, I think, is picking your favorite color and making all of your paintings blue. I'm like, I'm not a fan of just the all blue. Um, and the idea of an afterlife, I do know many religions have afterlife stories, but do we have any reason to believe that they're true? I don't know. I think we have lots of reasons to believe science is true, and science could is probably the best, most likely candidate to get us to an eternal kind of a life or afterlife. And the stories that we find in religions that emulate that are ideals, what we would imagine to be the case. But I don't see any reason to believe that it's true. That those are
Mhm.
something in reality to actually trust in.
Yes. Well, I think that's interesting. It's very interesting. Um, well, let's go back to your color thing, okay? And if you want to get freaked out about how many colors there are, just go to Home Depot or go to a hardware store and look at how many variations of colors there are possible within the phenomenal world's color spectrum. But all colors ultimately are derivative of light, of white. So they all are. That's the sum total of all color is white. Now, or light. Now, I'm looking at the heart that way, that the heart has a splendorous levels of varieties and nuanced facets, like a fine jewel. And that, yes, there are aspects of love that may generate feelings of disgust or hatred or it's the seed of feelings. It's the seed of feelings. So I would agree with you. Yeah, human beings are a composite of various kinds of feelings, and feelings are absolute. Intellectual studies are not necessarily absolute. First of all, science can change in terms of worldviews. Um, one and one is two. Well, pretty much most of the time that's true. But sometimes, I mean, if I say one and one is three, I would hope that you would correct me because that's not correct. But if you are um, feeling something, That's absolute. No one can tell you what your feelings are but you. And again, we get back to, the music thing. If you feel something that's powerfully connecting with something or someone, this is precious currency. I mean, I like what you said, that love can be something that reflects back. There's a kind of resonance, it causes something in us to kind of resonate. And in the Indian traditions, we have something called the chakras, that there are psychoenergetic centers within our embodied state. And the reason why some music speaks to us and not other kinds of music is because there are certain psychoenergetic centers that can get triggered by some music and not other music. Um, so that reflective thing, I like that in some sense, musicians play instruments, and then those instruments play us as an instrument, a little bit like resonating strings under a sitar. The main string is played, but then the sympathetic strings get triggered, and we're like those sympathetic strings. So, who doesn't love music of some kind, right? I mean, music is powerful. It's beautiful. And again, I think love is tied up with beauty. I mean, does anyone ever say, let's go out tonight and see something ugly?
Yes,
I mean,
I do know some people who do that, but
some people would do that. Okay, that's fine.
well,
Yeah.
I know a number of people who like to explore their sensory perceptions and responses to things. So it's like watching a horror movie. You watch a horror movie not because you want to feel beauty or joy, because you want to feel tense and exhausted and terrified. And similarly, people do the same thing with art. They make art that is intentionally ugly
Yes.
to create the sensation that generates in people. So it's just like playing different music to create different sensations in people. And I think that is deeper than focusing on love. I don't think I would say everything comes from love. I would think of them as separate emotions, black and white, not in the sense of black is the negation of white or the lack of white, but more as its
Right.
own kind of a thing. And I
Hmm.
think that when we experience things in the world, because I'm a materialist, so I think everything's in the brain. I think that these emotions are different responses that are independent of one another, and that you can have one without the other, because we can destroy a part of your brain and you're incapable of feeling love, but you can still feel hate because it's a different part of the brain. Um, and so I think of these as separate kinds of ingredients or colors that can be used. But I'd still be curious, is there a reason to believe that one of our interpretations is a more likely to that we should put faith in, or more likely that we should invest in for the future? Like, what is the better approach to understanding ideologies and living? Because I think we should put all our money on trying to cure death. The one that can cure death is the best one, without a doubt. And I think science is the best one that can do that. But how would you assess which is the best way to live?
See, you just exhibited a faith in science. And so, for example, a famous text like the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the three most read sacred texts of the world, Bhagavad Gita talks about faith. So you have faith that science can cure death, if that's what I heard correctly.
I base it on evidence. I wouldn't call it faith, but in general, yes.
Yeah, but evidence. Even with evidence, you have to have some faith that the evidence is evidence. I mean that there's some veracity, some you know, um, uh, you know, um, something true about what you're looking at as evidence. Um, and faith in the Sanskrit tradition, the word is shraddha, and shraddha means where you place your heart, that is your faith. So it's not, we can't divorce, we don't, no human being is purely intellectual. There is something behind that. We're composite human being, creatures. We have a sense. We sense things. We we have feelings about things. That is behind often what we intellectualize. And I think that's a good facility, So you have this sense that science can cure death. I have this sense that science will never cure death. They're not even close. I mean, I think science does amazing things, but that is simply out of range. I don't think they can cure death. So, and then, of course, if they could, I mean, like you said, what would you do with it? I was once driving along, and this was about, 10, 15 years ago. I turned on the radio because I was stuck in traffic. So I thought I'd get the news from NPR. And an announcer very seriously said that science has found or discovered an enzyme that can double your lifespan. They said that the side effect is early premature death. Now, I practically ran off the road in laughter. He was perfectly serious when he was announcing this. But this is a joke. Here you're promised the possibility of doubling your lifespan, but you could have the side effect of an early premature death. Now, is this a joke? I mean, why would anyone take that? Why would anyone, first of all, why would someone want to double their lifespan? Second of all, why would someone want to risk doing that, gaining that, and actually cutting their life short?
Isn't that what all medicines do? Like, all medicines have a risk that could kill you. What the point of taking them is to increase your life expectancy.
That's right. So I mean, but this seemed to me to be the extreme, right? I mean, you're supposed to be able to double your life, and then you could be actually cutting your life short, very short. But death is the great mystery of human existence. That's everyone's religion, is death. Now, the question is, what do you do with it? You remember the famous book, The Denial of Death, Pulitzer Prize winning book, The Denial of Death. I forgot who the author was. Anyway, a few decades ago. But it was really quite an interesting study by an anthropologist. His claim might have been a little extreme, but he said everything we do is to either deal with the fact of death or deny death to escape the idea of death. Death is something that happens to other people. I'm not going to die, and I'll live in such a way that I'm assuming that I'll just go on forever. So death is the big test. It's the big question mark. Human beings.
Well, I'd see it as,
yeah, go ahead. You got it.
well, I don't see death as the big question mark. I see death as the current big question mark. Death is the problem that we all have to try to solve right now, but it's not the final question mark. I think it's just one in a long line of more question marks that we haven't discovered yet. And it's once we solve it, we'll just discover the next question mark, which will be an even more interesting, even bigger one.
You have this faith that we're going to solve death.
Well, I have pretty good evidence to work on that. Like we've increased human life expectancy by 3 times in the past 300 years, so we're on a pretty good path record to do it. Also, like
Okay, well,
artificial intelligence. Once we get an artificial general intelligence, and we can integrate it into our consciousness in some way, our minds.
yeah,
The processing power it can do is going to be able to affect what we can change among our genes and among physics drastically. And it's going to be another massive step in increasing our life expectancy hundreds, if not thousands of years. So I have, as long as we don't blow ourselves up or destroy the planet, we have a pretty good shot at curing death.
Yeah, I see now this to me that's inconceivable. I think that death is something that's built into the fabric of existence, and that we cycle around the seasons. It's like saying let's try to have spring all year long. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's built into the nature of things. People get born, things get born, other creatures get born, and they die. They wither, they wither and they die. It's just part of the nature of things. I think to alter that, this is where I think science can become dangerous, is when we try to alter the state of existence to such an extent that we end up shortchanging ourselves and mortgaging the quality of life. Um,
What do you mean?
I think there's a careful balance that science needs to strike here.
What do you mean when you say mortgaging the value of life?
Well, okay, so for example, back in the 60s, Rachel Carson, discovered that the government was, allowing the insecticide DDT to be spread on our vegetables. And this way, we could produce more vegetables and we could, have more in the supermarkets. But then DDT was known as a carcinogen, so it was killing people while it was giving people, more variety of food. It was also killing people at the same time. I would call that mortgaging. You have one advantage, but look what's going on. It's the same thing with the enzyme. Hey, double your lifespan, but you could die nice and early.
I don't, because I see most things like that. Like when you go hunting for food, like if you think of a hunter-gatherer societies, when you go hunting for food, there's a chance you're going to die. There's a chance the bear is going to kill you, but there's a chance
Yes.
you increase the life expectancy of your entire tribe for X number of months or whatever. I don't see that as diminishing or mortgaging the value of life to take risks to try to improve it. I'd see like if the risks are successful, it actually increases the value of life. And I think the goal would be to eliminate the risks. So all
Yeah.
you do is increase the value of life. And so
Yes.
these things are not mortgaging the value of life. I think they are trying to increase it like investments.
Okay. So, like investments, there's a risk factor, and we need to talk about, in any of these kinds of things, the cost benefit. So, the cost of industrialization has, we've created a world that the climates, the change in climate and so on, could be disastrous, all because we wanted, pollutants, things that gave us facility on a certain level, but then are going to end up costing us dearly on another level. So we need to. I think that's a careful balance. It's difficult. It's difficult. You know,
Or
it's
absolutely. I think that it's extremely difficult, but I think that our progress so far has indicated that in the area of science, the benefits almost always outweigh the risks. Like every advancement in science, even the bad ones, nuclear weapons, for example, has saved more lives than it's taken. Even if we take in all the nuclear proliferation, the nuclear weapons, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the deaths caused by nuclear weapons, and even the meltdowns in all the different nuclear facilities, all of those deaths combined are still only a fraction of the number of lives saved through nuclear power plants and proliferation of electricity and all the different ways that it's benefited humanity. So I can't think of a single scientific progress that's caused more damage than the amount it's saved.
well, of course, uh, the sort of, well, we'll have to wait and see if what you say about atomic energy is correct. So far, yes, I would agree with you. But Vladdy's having a hissy fit over there in Russia, and I think he didn't have enough hugs from his mother, honestly. And he, when he has a hissy fit, it's different than when I have one. I might affect a few neighbors here, but when he does it, it's all the whole world. And I'm telling you, that thumb can get a little itchy. It can, because he's getting older. He's facing his own mortality, which I think is scaring him more than anything else. And I think he's dealing with it in very, very destructive ways. Now, the Bhagavad Gita, going back to religion, it states that all battles on the outside begin with the inner battles, the indwelling battles that we have on the inside. And that's why Gandhi said, if you want to change the world, change yourself.
What if we did get artificial intelligence, if we were able to make computers that were truly conscious, how would your religious beliefs interpret that? How would a computer being conscious relate to the religion? Would they potentially have souls, be able to interact in that way? Would it change the fabric of reality in some way? Or like you mentioned, you said if we could manipulate our lives so that we don't die anymore, would that challenge your religious beliefs in some way, that because it would be contravening in some of the things that it says?
First of all, I love the idea of artificial intelligence. Again, I think it's one of the, in fact, AI is already something that's being used now to be more efficient in all kinds of ways and to accelerate beyond normal human capacity information that we're able to absorb. And you're speaking to someone who loves science. I love what science can do if it's not if it's not destroying us at the same time. Now, that could be more of a socio-political issue, how science is used or misused. I understand that. Pure science is a good idea, in my opinion. I think it's a good idea. And in the university, I studied the philosophy of science, starting with Karl Popper and looking at the history of science and so on. And it's truly amazing. It's a wonderful study. But I've also studied the misuse of science, and that's horrifying, the way science can be misused. But that's true of anything. Religion is, my gosh, talk about being misused. Religion is terrible, has a terrible record of being misused. So I think the idea is for me is if computers can advance so much. Right now during my sabbatical, I'm trying to complete several books. Honestly, I would love for a computer to come along and basically, to take care of a lot of the, footwork for that, writing those books. Okay. So I'd love it. Okay. I'll just be very honest. Now, but will computers be able to feel? No. They will never feel. They may emulate feelings, they may imitate that, but they will not be able to feel.
And what if they do? What if it happens that they can feel? How would that challenge your belief in some way?
Not particularly, but I know that they will never be able to.
How do you know that?
Because computers are not sentient beings.
Why would you assume that they can't be, though?
Well, first of all, because at least in my lifetime, they'll never achieve anything close to that. Secondly, it's I think this is where science would like to be God when it really can't be. It's just not the domain of science. But the domain of science itself is wonderful. What it can do and what it is doing, I think, is marvelous.
Well, what do you mean when you say science is playing God here? Because to me, it doesn't seem like this would be a extension beyond the goals of science, because the goal of science is to understand reality. Consciousness seems to be a feature of reality, and as far as I can tell, it's a feature of the brain, which is a mechanistic process. And so being able to replicate the functions of the mechanistic process in the brain with mechanical silicone seems perfectly like an extension of what science would be doing. It seems like you have, because of your belief system, you think that the consciousness is special in some way, that it's outside the bounds of science's scope. Whereas I think that would be a strange belief to have, because I think science is the closest thing we have to a connection to the fundamental nature of reality. And so anything in reality is the purview of science. And to exclude something like consciousness from that seems strange to me.
Mm. I just think that's a quantum leap to go from 0 to 1. Going from 1 to 2, I can see that. That makes sense. But for science to go from mechanical, pretty much a mechanistic world to a world that's not mechanical, that's pure consciousness, to me is a leap that they'll never be able to make. And I'm thinking rationally. In my rational world, that's what I understand. When looking at when studying, as I did in the university and utilize it still, philosophical hermeneutics, which comes out of the Continental School of Philosophy. Science has its domain, but religion has its domain. Each one can tread into the realm of the other very, imperfectly and improperly. The world of art, for example. What does science have to do with art? You might want to create a computer that can, produce beautiful art. Okay. Of course, who created the computer? A human. So in one sense, the computer is an extension of what it means to be a human. So in a way, how original is a computer? A computer has human origins. Like the rest of science, science is an extension of the empirical facility of the human. If I want to see Jupiter, a telescope, now with these eyes, especially with mine, and I see you're wearing glasses too, but my I can just see so far. The telescope extends my vision. It's amazing what these recent pictures that NASA has taken of the planets. Have you seen those?
Yes.
They're beautiful. I mean, it's not just amazing science, but it's showing us something that we can revel in as something extraordinarily beautiful. So I mean, again, science can facilitate, but itself is not intrinsically valuable, but is in a kind of techne sense that very, very valuable.
Well, it reminds me of, oh yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of all the times people have said science will never be able to make faster than sound travel. Science will never be able to make chess computers that are better than humans. Science will never be able to make man fly. There's always claims that what science will never be able to do. There's always these hard barriers that people can't imagine that it will cross.
Sure.
And soon enough, science crosses them, usually sooner rather than later. And so it seems strange to put those kinds of barriers in front of what you imagine science can do. Whereas leaving open the possibility that they can breach that, especially since that seems to be what I think is the most rational conclusion, given everything we know about consciousness and its relations to the brain as it being mechanistic, and the ability to represent very similar processes in silicone. I don't see any barrier between a computer becoming consciousness when a brain can become conscious. To me, those seem, from all of the information we have, like they should be able to accomplish the same task of emergent consciousness. And to say that we can't go from can't go from 0 to 1. To me, that's like saying you can't get life from non-life, or you can't get consciousness from non-consciousness, something along those lines.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
That seems very much like the claim you can't get walls from non-walls, or you can't get water from non-water. But we know if you take a hydrogen atom and an oxygen atom, or two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom, you put them together, then it becomes water. So even if some composite parts lack some property of water, when they're combined, they can have an emergent property that wasn't there before. And I don't see why that wouldn't be the same case for consciousness or for life. It's like a
Well, you
composition
have
division fallacy.
you have faith in that, and that's fine. My faith goes more into what is ultimately beautiful. Now, I also have faith in the human spirit, that it can extend itself into these amazing scientific, worlds. I think it's extraordinary. But you know what really bothers me is that while we're doing that and we're investing huge amounts of money into that sort of thing, it's the impoverishment of the heart that really concerns me in this world. Over 50,000 children in the US go to bed hungry every night. Now, to me, a culture that promotes science. So if science is that powerful, why isn't science feeding those 50,000 children?
Because we don't promote science, we promote capitalism.
Well, okay. But if science were utilized, and if capitalism would stop using science in socio-political and negative ways, not that it always does that, but it's a question of where does humanity put its energy? Where are we really? How are we really taking care of ourselves?
I think
Science is a
actually, well,
way.
that's a really great question. If we
Yeah.
invested in science
Mhm.
or chose to invest in religion, which do you think would be more likely to feed the children?
Well, I know a man in India who feeds 1.8 million school children a day.
That's it.
Well,
Because
that's quite.
I know a man
That's
named
only one
Norman
person.
Borlaug. Well, I
Well,
know a man
listen.
named Norman Borlaug, one person. He is known as the man who saved 1 billion lives. He invented genetically modified wheat and rice. And from that invention alone, it decreased the world starvation rate by like 20 to 30%. And so that one invention saved literally billions of people
Okay.
scientifically.
Then science. So what about my 50,000 children?
I think that's pretty good. It's several orders of magnitude smaller. I think if we
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, but the irony is that an invention can do that, but the problem is the way science can do that. But then how does it filter through, our socio-political system to be able to feed those children? Sometimes you just have to start not at the scientific theory level, but you have to just go and cook for them. You just have to start cooking. You know what I'm saying? So yes, I love that. I love that we can utilize science to make food more accessible to humans in the millions and millions and millions of hundreds of millions. But you see, we humans are lacking heart, and that's the problem. Science and humanity have this kind of filter of the socio-political systems that don't allow science to do all the good that it can do. And also, same thing with religion. Religion has huge blockages between its genuine faith and what it can do for humanity, and what it ends up doing, and the kinds of destructive things that it can do. That's not true religion. So, religion misused, science misused is the problem. And that comes down to the human condition.
oh,
That's the
absolutely.
human condition. And
Absolutely. But I
religion
see
tries
that
to address this. You see, religion tries to address this. Whether it does that successfully or not, that is another question. Science tries to address, but science doesn't really address the human condition. It gives solutions to human condition. But it doesn't, science can't produce an ethical system. That's the stuff that religion should be doing. I'm not sure they do it well enough, typically. But science, there's no reason why science and religion in the truest sense of the term, can't be extremely compatible and work together, taking out the ugliness of avarice and greed and capitalism to an unhealthy extent. Um, like I said, pure science, pure religion, that would be wonderful. But where is that?
Well, I think that we can get a moral system from science. I'm a moral naturalist. It's a position in philosophy that thinks that morality can be understood through and discovered through the scientific means, just like everything else. And so I think that we can discover a model of morality that can inform us on the best ways to live for everybody. And I think that science will overtake that field as it has so many others in academia, where it started as philosophy and then was replaced by science later on, and cosmology, astrology, all those different fields, phrenology. Um, and that is, I think that like you mentioned, that there are misapplications of religion and science, and religion's goal is to try to address the human condition. But I don't see any religions that have ever done that successfully, as opposed to science, which doesn't even try. You're right, it makes no attempt to address the human condition, but it seems to make more progress in that field, even though it's making no attempts to solve that problem, than any of the religions ever have. Seems like if we want to see what societies have the highest levels of education, least levels of crime, highest quality of life, it's all the ones that have the highest scientific progress, not the ones that have the most religious devotion, regardless of which religion it is. I think Jainism is the most moral religion. I think they're the closest in my position.
Mhm.
But even of those societies, they don't even come close to America. And America is a morally corrupt society in pretty much every way. But
Yeah.
because of science, I think it makes up for that.
You make a lot of interesting remarks. I mean, I'm vegan, and I drive an electric car. I have solar panels. I'm using science the best way I know how to use it. If we can live off the solar energy, why not do it? And even though it's not very cost effective these days to do it, it costs more than it saves. But you know what? In principle, I do it because I believe in science that really is in harmony with nature and utilizes nature in very positive, um, life promoting fashions and not life destructive fashions. I don't know that we need 100 different types of wallets. And is it worth all the pollution that goes into the rivers to produce 100 varieties of wallets? But that's capitalism. So we're undoing so much of the good science by, and again, has to do with the human condition, and the human condition has to do with what's in our hearts. What do we desire? What do we want? This is the human heart. And yoga philosophy is about appreciating what is within and being very simple about what is on the outside, not being very complex, to be very satisfied with what we've got and then give away the rest.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the next goal of humanity is improving the human condition for sure, and trying to find the best
Yes,
method to do
indeed.
that.
Indeed. And I'm open to any aspect that science can address that and anything that religion can contribute to that. Again, I think that it's not one or the other. I think both are extremely important. And I think each really draws from the other in ways that is not that maybe it's not even very aware of. Um, Faith is what generates our ability to keep going and finding those ultimate solutions, like you've expressed here today in this conversation.
Well, we have been going for about an hour. We do have some questions from the audience, if you don't mind.
Okay, that's fine. However you do things, I'm willing to be fairly cooperative. I think you'll find me fairly cooperative.
Awesome. You could make a donation for $1,000? That's pretty standard. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
Winston's
You're
mom
asking a
asks,
poor professor. You're asking we're not the highest paid group in the economy. So yeah.
I'm philosophy, so I know that my job is sit in the cardboard box on the side of the street. That's yeah, I'm
Well,
familiar.
so we're pretty much in the same boat here,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
Does Dr. Schwing believe that the Akashic records, believe in the Akashic records, and does he know his ruling Nakasha? I don't know what those words mean.
Nakshatra. Yeah, that's astrology. Um, for the second part, you'd have to ask my wife. She's a little more familiar with those kinds of things. So I don't really know. Um, the first question, the Akashic records. This became really known back in the 60s when certain Akashic records apparently revealed that Jesus went to the East and he, for those 40 years, right, in the desert and so on. Um, I've not really studied anything about that. It is interesting that there are higher sort of levels of information that the human uh, being can be cognizant of these kinds of. My father was a psychoanalyst and a psychiatrist, a Duke MD, educated fellow, and once he and my mother, early on in their marriage, they were on vacation and they went to one of these readers. You know, these they do the reading, right? Either the I don't know much
Like
about
tarot
it,
card reading.
like it's something like that. But I don't think she used tarot cards. I think it was just like a something. I don't know what they do. Anyway, my father, being very much a scientist and quite an accomplished one in the realm of psychiatry, he was a professor also of psychiatry at George Washington University. He went out of there pretty freaked out. He had no idea how she could know about his great aunt who left him this and did this and did that and so on. I think that there are areas of human awareness and consciousness and intuition that, if gained access to, does allow us some extra information, extra cognizance, and so on. But I've not studied this realm of either religion or consciousness or I've just I would have no way to really respond to that any further. Yeah, but it's interesting.
Gotcha. Nothingness asks, if do you believe that matter is all an illusion, like an idealist?
Now, if I were to respond with the Indian tradition, the word used to express what illusion is Maya. Now, the Indian philosophical view of the world is that it is pervaded of Maya, of illusion. Now, I like the word illusion because the word illusion comes from the Latin illudo, which means to play. So there's a sense in which this world plays on something that is ultimately true. So this almost gets Platonic in a way, that there's some archetypal sort of existence that we're evoking and invoking through this present existence that we mistake as something permanent when it's really just temporal. Um, the example that's very classic in India is if I'm walking along and there's a rope that is in the way and I jump over it thinking, oh my gosh, that's a snake. Well, I was in illusion, wasn't I? But ropes have many of the attributes of snake. They get curly around, they're long, they may be even the same color. So was Graham entirely like crazy to jump over the thing? No, because there are snakes and there are ropes. I just confused the one for the other. Now, delusion is something else. Delusion is, hey, watch out, don't move. There are several serpents over your head. Okay, so don't move. I see them. Don't move. Don't move. Okay, they're about to hit your microphone. Okay, don't move. Now that's delusional. There's nothing above your head that would make me mistake anything for a serpent. So some philosophers in India say that the world is delusional. It doesn't actually exist. But to say that it's pervaded by illusion or an elusive energy is to say that there's something higher than this world to which for which we all yearn through the kind of temporal status of things in this phenomenal world. So there are different philosophical viewpoints. So illusion, Maya, yeah, I mean that's matter is elusive in the sense that it's always changing. Always changing. In that sense, it's elusive. If I hold this pen for 1,000,000 years, it will disappear. This pen will not. My hand could be holding this pen for 1,000,000 years. This pen will no longer exist. So matter is always in flux, and in that sense, it's seen as illusion by the Indian systems.
Gotcha. Junior SKP asks, what justification does he have for his beliefs?
You left out the word dude. Okay, now that's an important word here. Okay, now it's again, it's not a question of beliefs, and it's not a matter of justifications. I earlier tried to tell you that, and our beloved audience here, that it's about being in love with an aspect of reality. And what gives you more energy and more life, more faith in the gifts and the blessings of this life. That's what I'm working with, not really beliefs. Leo Tolstoy, I think we can admit that Leo Tolstoy was an amazing author of some kind. You may not be a fan. The dude questioner is mentioning here, but when he heard the parable of the man being chased by the mad elephant, and this whole parable that maybe we don't have time to go into, I could tell it, but when he heard this parable, and it's only a parable, he changed his whole life. He renounced everything and decided to try to deal with the problem of existence and the nature of existence and the purpose of existence in his later life. He dropped everything. He became a sort of monk in his own. And his wife, and he had a very good relationship of so many decades, but he renounced everything to deal with the problem of existence. And when hearing this story, so he said, this is not just a fable. This is truth in its ultimate sense, and I have to deal with it. Truth of the nature of reality as we find it.
Gotcha. The hymn asks, what are his beliefs? What is his belief?
Okay. Well, I think in our talk, I've tried to explain that I believe ultimately in the human heart at its purest levels, where we can feel most authentically and genuinely, when we can actually connect with the hearts of other human beings, and with something that is ultimately a kind of an embrace of reality. That I believe that we are living, that the universe is ultimately a loving place that embraces us even now, but we don't appreciate it. And I think that the perfection of human life is to be able to return that embrace.
Gotcha. I would definitely disagree. I'd say that the universe is killing us and we have to fight against it. That would be my position.
well, yes. And that's the smaller picture. Yes, it is killing us. But in the larger picture, there's something beyond the killing of us. Yes. That's what, yeah.
60-second skeptic. 60-second skeptic asks, what is the best evidence for chakras existing?
What is the best evidence? Well, there are these Eastern systems of medicine, for example, that in the 60s were you could be thrown in jail for practicing, for example, acupuncture. But what's been discovered in the East, which Western medicine is yet to fully appreciate, is that there are these meridians, these meridians running throughout the body, energies that by manipulating them slightly, you can actually avoid anesthesia and have open stomach surgery while you're fully conscious. So it's amazing. There are things about the human body that we have yet to discover. And the, the chakra energy, the psychoenergetic centers are in that realm of just of yet to be discovered things. And of course, that's the beauty of science, discovery, realizing. And hey, you were saying that earlier, right? That we can't even imagine those things being there, but science may discover them easily.
Church of Entropy asks, does he think the determinations of rishis and sages differ from those of materialist science, and in what way?
Now, I know that a lot of religion likes to say that we have the scientific answers to things. And, I mean, we get that with Christian Science, we get that with evangelicals, some evangelicals, some science, some religionists really feel that science is an aberration. We don't need science. That if you're sick, then you need to pray. But that's like saying if you have a common cold, you can heal the common cold by going into the winter without a jacket. I mean, it's just it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Um, I think that science again has its particular domain. Not that they don't overlap or cannot overlap, religion and science, but really, what the rishis and the sages, in my view, are trying to do is to illuminate the nature of human awareness, human consciousness, and the nature of the heart. These are realms that go beyond science, but science has realms that go beyond religion. And for certain Christians to say that the earth was created 5,000 years ago, I, they should just be, they would be better off praying. They would actually get more done praying and purifying their hearts than insisting, and I mean being really insistent on a creationist worldview. Let science do its thing. Yeah, I know science has these theories that the source of life can be found in the black holes and whatnot. Well, we'll see if that is possible, but or we won't see. That may be for other generations beyond any of our generations here. But the point is that allow religion to genuinely nourish us, whatever that true religion is, and allow science all of its amazing facilities now. They're not incompatible.
Gotcha. Winston's mom asks, what is your Myers-Briggs formulation?
Oh, I don't know. I've never done any testing of that sort or taken any evaluations like that. Never bothered. I just do what I do, and I write the books that I write, and I practice the deep meditations that I go into, and I have a very frankly luxurious life. Very fortunate. Um, no complaints about my life. Just the rest of the world, I feel terrible about for much of the world. Yeah.
I think I'm a INTJ, if you're wondering. Joking Atheist, the last question is, can religion stifle progress, and can the same be said for science?
I think that the human condition is what will stifle science. I think the human condition will stifle religion. We've seen it already. Um, it really boils down to the human condition. Both do address the human condition, but from different angles of vision. And I think, again, I think they don't have to be incompatible. But I think when one tries to do the job of the other and the other tries to do the job of the one, I think that's where overreaching, overstepping occurs. And I think that can be destructive. Or let me put it this way, not productive. But I think it's worth having faith, relatively speaking, in each one. But the nature of that faith is different. It's different. Like I said, on my deathbed, I will not be appreciating all the wonders of science and so glad that in this life I encountered science. No, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be thanking reality for bringing the people in my life that I love, that the all the beauty in my life, all the wonderful things. That's what I'll be thanking. That's what I'll be contemplating, but not the wonders of science. The wonders of science may have helped me access those things, though. And for that, I can always be appreciative. For example, in talking to you, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my gosh, let's talk about how wonderful cyber world is, okay? Let's just drop everything else and let's just talk about how amazing it is to be able to see one another, even though I don't even know where you are. So we can do that, but rather than talk about that, we shouldn't take it for granted either, but we're utilizing it to be able to engage in this conversation, which I do think is wonderful. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was it for the questions. We've been going for about an hour and a half. I really appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation. Do you want to give any links or references where people can find out more about your work?
Oh, they can go to, grahamschweig.com if they'd like. I'm terrible in updating anything. I give lectures at the Smithsonian, invited lectures at the Smithsonian. In fact, I've got one coming up in November that's online. So anywhere in the world, you can register for it. It's on death and the afterlife, as a matter of fact. And the way I get on with that is I say, look, everyone, think of me as your travel agent. Okay. So, I've got a bunch of different travel options and we'll go through them. so I have fun with that. And it's always a delight interacting with my Smithsonian audiences and so on. So anyway.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. And it was a great conversation. Thanks again for having on. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.